Alright guys, we're back. Now keep in mind everything that I'm getting ready to tell you is coming from the perspective of where the officiant and groom are looking down the aisle. So if you're a solo shooter, this is exactly how you need to be filming your weddings. It's clean, crisp, perfect, and you're not dealing with any stupid gimbal, because those are the dumbest thing you can be using on a wedding day as a solo shooter. Now the first thing you want to do is you want to take one of your cameras and put that down kind of on the ground, but obviously on a tripod. I personally like to be on the left. Now I'm going to show some B-roll to kind of help you out understand what I'm talking about. Usually that camera is about a foot off the ground shooting down the aisle, and remember, I'm off to the left. This is all going to make sense. I'm always on an R6, and I'm usually on maybe a 24 prime or a 35 prime. I like to be wide. I don't believe in the shutter rule for most of the day. It's just not realistic in real life. On paper, yeah, it makes sense, but on a real wedding day, on the fly, I crank my shutter up to 4,000, and I'm usually anywhere between like f4 and like f12, depending on obviously the atmosphere and how bright it is. And I shoot that aperture because I want everybody pretty much in focus from like the top of the aisle all the way down to the groom. Now again, I'm on the left side, okay? On my other camera, this is only going to be a 2-camera setup. On my other camera, I'm anywhere between 10 feet to maybe 100 feet to the left of that little camera on the ground. Now you want to be on the same side to follow the 180 rule. If you don't know what that means, Google it. I'll kind of talk about it a little bit, but you want to make sure that the flow of motion is consistent, because you don't want your viewer to kind of lose interest or thinking, why in the world are they moving that direction all of a sudden? So little camera, wide on the left, another camera 30 feet, 50 feet to the left with a 70 to 200. That way everybody is going to be coming down the aisle on screen left to right. And then if you need to make a cutaway to your other camera, they're still going to be going the same direction, which is left to right. If you only have one camera down front, and you need to make a cut, you're going to have those jump cuts. Hopefully you guys know what jump cuts are. They have no business being in wedding films, and I see them time and time again, and it drives me crazy. So the reason you have that other camera, again, way off to the left, is because you're on the same side. You can get maid of honor, or you can get groomsmen and bridesmaid on your little camera coming down left to right, and then your next cut is going to be groomsman, bridesmaid number 2 on your other camera, and they're still going left to right. Hopefully I haven't lost you guys, because this all makes sense. And again, I'm going to put B-roll up to kind of, you guys can understand this. Now, you can do this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's kind of predictable, but you're going to have obviously B-roll of bride prep, groom prep, portraits, toast, a couple of drone shots, etc., to kind of sprinkle out to break up that motion, because you don't want your shots to be predictable and boring, and you also don't want to have those ugly jump cuts, which is what you're preventing with those 2 cameras right there. Now here's the great part, because I can't tell you how many wedding people have written me, how many videos I've seen where they're using a gimbal, and on the groom reaction shot, you actually see the videographer holding some gimbal in that shot. You don't want to be seen in your video. And I'm going to show you how to never have that. So that little camera we have up front, getting everybody coming down the aisle, that's going to be your bride camera, where she's constantly in focus. Now the camera that you're manning with the 70 to 200, usually when the flower girl, ring bearers are coming down the aisle, you can take that camera that you're on a tripod and just rotate it for your groom. Now, you're still following the 180 rule. So in real life, that groom on camera is going to be looking right to left, and the bride's going to be coming down left to right. If you had your other camera on the other side of that smaller camera, now your groom's going to be looking the same direction as your bride's coming down the aisle. It's not going to make any sense. It would look like the bride was walking to the groom's back. So the groom would be looking left to right, and then your bride would be walking down the aisle left to right. If you take that camera and you keep it to the left of the camera, getting everybody going left to right, and you rotate it around, now your groom is looking right to left, and your bride is coming left to right. Following the 180 rule, there's no gimbal you have to worry about because your smaller camera is getting everybody coming down the aisle. If for some reason you're fumbling around on your camera you're manning with the tripod, you're covered. Now, when the bride comes down the aisle, all you have to do is just rotate that camera on your groom, right to left, left to right. It's perfect, it's beautiful, it makes sense. No gimbal, no fumbling around. This is just with a 2-camera setup. Now, as far as, Brett, what about vows? How do you do vows as a solo shooter? It's extremely easy. That little camera that we have down at the front, me personally, when they do the prayer, in my head, I'm like, all right, dude, you got about 30 seconds to a minute to get this camera to the other side, throw a 70 to 200 on it, and both cameras now have 70 to 200s, and it looks identical because when you move that center camera off to, I call that, that's going to be like your groom angle. You want your groom angle and your bride angle to be about the same distance so it makes sense. So you don't want to have a nice tight shot of the bride vows and then your groom angle, you're a mile away on a different lens or different camera body. You want everything to be consistent and clean. Now, one thing that I've learned over the years is you need to know who is going to talk first for vows. This is crucial, especially if you're in a Catholic church and you have to walk all the way around that giant aisle. There might be a time where you're actually going to miss that bride or groom doing their vows if you're not there or you don't have the camera positioned beforehand. So let's say theoretically for this little thing we're going to talk about, I know the bride's going to be giving her vows first. So I know I have time with my groom angle. I need to get that little camera over to the other side of the wedding and just dial that in on my groom. Now, I'm not necessarily worried right now perfectly how that's going to be because if my bride's going to go first, my original camera that I had on the groom, I'm going to want that to be focused on the bride. But before the vows happen, I always kind of designate a camera that's going to be my officiant camera. Usually for me, again, solo shooter, it's the same playbook, same scenario. My bride cam is also going to be my officiant cam. And then my groom cam is just my groom cam. I don't have to worry about anything like that. But the good thing about knowing who is going to do vows first, you kind of know in your head that you have to either go to the left side or the right side and get framed up, positioned, rule of third, white balance, f-stop, shutter, all that stuff needs to be in sync. So if you are on the other side, you're already recording and you've already got focus on the groom's eyes and you're ahead of the game. Now, if you do have a third camera, which I personally use 3 cameras, but sometimes down here in like South Florida, if it's a very small beach ceremony that's only going to last 5 minutes, and there's been times up north where I've had 3 cameras and I'm fumbling around with that third camera, and then before I know it, the ceremony's over. And I'm like, man, why didn't I just use 2 cameras? But if you do have a third camera, I like to just use that camera in the back. I'm not a big fan of having it centered up because I know the photographer loves that shot. So I always tell the photographers, hey, if you want to have that center cam, do what you got to do. I'm going to be either on the left third or the right third, just kind of depending on kind of what I'm thinking that day. But that third camera, I'm usually anywhere between like f4, 5, 6, getting all 3 officiant, bride, groom kind of focused up. So I'm not going to be shooting at like 1.2 or anything like that. I'm going to be like 5, 6, 4.0, somewhere around there where they're all in focus. And as soon as they do the ring exchange, or I know they're getting ready to go into a now pronounce you husband and wife, number 1, I've got my back camera that's going to get that wide shot, the kiss, the hand raise, the clapping. But whatever camera I am on, before that happens, I'm going to rotate that over to either the bride's parents or the groom's parents. I'm going to dial that down to like 5.6 and get them clapping. So one camera is my officiant. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Next angle is the wide shot of the actual kiss. Next angle is just the clapping. So you always want to be ahead of the schedule knowing kind of mental cue, all right, I know they're going to kiss. In about 12 seconds, they're going to kiss. So I have about 12 seconds to rotate this camera, get it on grandma, get it on mom, get it on dad, get it on an uncle, someone that I know that is going to be clapping. That way I can close the film out. So I know I just threw a lot at you guys, but I'm going to put everything in the link in the little description below. I'm gonna word it a little bit kind of friendly so you have an idea. But just to recap, for 2 cameras, you want to have one camera on the ground, getting everybody coming down the aisle. Your other camera is going to be on that exact same side with the 70 to 200, where you can actually track them. So if you're cutting cameras left to right, next camera, they're still going left to right. Right before the bride comes down the aisle, that 70 to 200 camera, just turn that around, get the groom. You've already got your little camera getting everybody coming in to focus. It's so easy, it's convenient. You're not worrying about gimbals, HDMI cords breaking, screens cracking, firmware updates, rotating, balances, focusing. You're not worrying about any of that stupid crap that you don't need to be worrying about, especially as a solo shooter. If you have a team of 5 people, yeah, you can get away with somebody on a gimbal. But as far as solo shooters go, you want to have clean, sexy shots that just work. After the prayer, you move that center camera with the 24 or 35. I already usually have a 70 to 200 on the ground. I know it's probably not the best, but I know that's kind of my marker. I put my tripod there, put my lens on, throw it on the groom, focus his eyes, get out of there, walk back around. Now the camera that I have, that's my officiant camera and my bride camera. Now if I have a back camera, I will go adjust that like I said. But right before the kiss, the closing, put one of those cameras on the crowd so you can get that reaction shot of them clapping. So that's how you should always be shooting a ceremony as a solo shooter. I'm going to be doing these things at least once a week. So if you could like and subscribe. If you guys have any questions, concerns, gear, any type of video thing you have anything about, again, this is mainly for my newbies, because when I started this in 08, I really didn't have any outlet, I guess. So I have gotten my butt kicked for years. I pretty much have done everything the wrong way, and I want to make sure that you guys that are interested in doing this, it can be weddings, setting up interviews. This obviously isn't the best interview setup, but I feel like I don't have to have the best setups for this kind of stuff, because I want to just speak the knowledge, the education, the passion, and I want you guys to really go into any single wedding out there, big or small, I do not care. Even if you just have 2 cameras, to really give your couple something absolutely sick. And all you really need is a couple of good tripods and a monopod. And then obviously I'll touch base about sound, lenses, and all that stuff. But again, if you guys can like and subscribe, I promise you this is going to be the best education in the world. And I want you guys to understand and dominate.